What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. After our recent video about the joystick gaming mouse, a ton of you guys have been requesting more custom gaming peripheral videos. While we are currently working on a joystick gaming keyboard that I think is gonna blow your mind, I wanted to post this video to hold you guys over until that comes out. And this time, it's for you controller players. When it comes to custom gaming controllers, one automatically thinks of a SCUF or an Xbox Elite controller. These controllers provide things like extra back buttons. These controllers have proven to be a massive benefit in games like Fortnite, allowing the player to remap key functions to the back paddles so they do not have to move their thumbs away from the analog sticks as much. So when coming up with an original idea for a custom gaming controller, I looked into the
ultimate debate of the 15-year-olds
within the Fortnite community known as controller versus keyboard and mouse. This debate is to what the superior gaming peripheral is. KBM players will always complain about controller players having aim assist, or true 360 degrees of analog movement over WASD, and last but not least, the in-game settings for advanced controller tuning, like being able to adjust things such as build and edit sense. Now on the controller side of things, controller players complain that KBM players have the precision aim of mouse, aiming with your entire hand and arm, not just your thumbs, or the far superior amount of keys to be able to bind to, but usually the number one complaint from controller players is KBM players have scroll wheel reset. Scroll wheel reset allows you to reset multiple builds with the flick of the scroll wheel. This was my aha moment. How hard would it be to add a scroll wheel to a controller? I started searching all over YouTube to see if this had already existed, and to my surprise, it hadn't. So it's time to do what I do best and build it myself. So when searching YouTube, I discovered many YouTubers who were using things like macros to emulate scroll wheel reset on a controller. Big YouTubers like Flea have made multiple videos on this method. A macro allows you to bind multiple keyboard and mouse inputs to a button on a controller. The downside of this is you can and will be banned if you're using macros in game, especially in competitive. Flea even put this warning in the top of his video description about scroll wheel macros on controller. The other downside of using macros to emulate scroll wheel reset on a controller is you have to dedicate an entire button to it, and with a controller's already limited amount of buttons, this isn't ideal. To see if adding a scroll wheel to a controller was even worth it, I watched a bunch of pro players and how they chose to edit reset on their controller. Nothing came close to scroll wheel. The closest I could find was binding all edit functions to the triggers of a controller. This way, your thumbs would never have to leave the analog sticks when editing. The first obstacle when designing the scroll wheel controller was finding the best placement for a scroll wheel on a controller. When using a scroll wheel on a mouse, you can quickly and easily move your finger to and from the scroll wheel while maintaining full control over movement and aim. Placing the scroll wheel on the front side, aka the face of the controller, would require you to move one of your thumbs off of the joystick to use it, as scroll wheel reset within Fortnite requires you to flick the scroll wheel while maintaining movement. The front side of the controller didn't seem like viable placement. When analyzing how your hand sits on a controller, depending on how you hold it, you use either 4 to 6 fingers to grip the controller. These fingers are not being utilized for button inputs. Placement of the scroll wheel on the back of the controller seemed like an obvious answer. I wanted to place the scroll wheel directly underneath my right hand's middle finger, as this is the finger I use for the scroll wheel on my mouse. This would be the most natural transition and by far the most comfortable placement. It would also allow me to not have to remove my thumbs from the analog sticks. For the mouse in the actual scroll wheel itself, any mouse can be used. I have an abundance of cheap Amazon Chinese gaming mouses from the Joystick Gaming Mouse project, so I went with those. Only one mouse is needed for this part of the project, but I found it easier to use too. Reason being is the scroll wheel needs to be removed from the mouse's main board. To do this, you need to desolder it. You can easily damage the mouse's main board when desoldering the scroll wheel from it if you're not experienced. And trust me, I'm still a noob when it comes to soldering and desoldering. By using an additional mouse just for parts, damaging the main board during the scroll wheel removal is not a threat. Once the scroll wheel has been completely removed from the donor board, you can rewire it to the main mouse's board using electrical wires to extend its length away from the board. As we are using a full-size mouse's scroll wheel, we needed a good amount of open space within the controller. This way, it wouldn't interfere with the other important components of the controller, like the main board and the other buttons. Both the PS4 and the Xbox One controller use large rumble motors in the grips of the controller. These rumble motors take up a ton of space within the controller and provide really a non-essential function. They also occupy the perfect spot to where the scroll wheel could be placed. When playing games like Fortnite or Call of Duty, I personally turn the rumble feature off as I find it distracting. Many people will even buy modded controllers with the rumble motors pre-removed as it makes the controller much lighter. Removing the rumble motors is quite easy. They are connected by just 2 wires that can easily be desoldered or cut. There is a ton of plastic within the controller's grip that hold these rumble motors in place and ensure they provide smooth vibration throughout the rest of the controller. All this plastic needs to be removed. We were easily able to remove all the excess plastic with a cheap Dremel and some sandpaper. We now had more than enough room to work with. Once being satisfied with the position I wanted the scroll wheel to face, I used that same Dremel to cut a hole for the scroll wheel to face out of. Now we needed to secure it in place. Using hot glue allows you to hold the scroll wheel in a temporary position, which you can then test it and make sure everything is working. If you make a mistake or are unhappy, you can just peel that hot glue off and try again. When you are 100% satisfied, you can then use epoxy resin for its final hold and placement. I know, the epoxy resin looks like magic sauce. Epoxy resin is super easy to work with and provides a very strong, permanent hold. So you may be asking yourself, how does this thing work? If you have watched my joystick gaming mouse video, you'll know that Fortnite allows you to use multiple button inputs at the same time, such as a mouse and a joystick. Instead of these inputs fighting with each other, they would work in sync. When it came to the joystick gaming mouse, we set the primary input to mouse and keyboard, as those were our overall primary inputs. In turn, Fortnite looked at the joystick mouse as just a regular mouse, so we lost things like aim assist. When it comes to the scroll wheel controller though, we are setting our primary input to controller and the mouse as our secondary input. This way, the game will still allow multiple inputs to work together, but we will keep things like aim assist. Alright guys, I know I've been slacking with the giveaways, so let me make it up to you. I'm officially giving away this controller, so let me know in the comment section below if you want this controller, and on May 1st, I'll pick the winner. I'll reply to the winner's comment thread and ask for your Insta or Twitter, and then I'll DM you. I'll be doing the same thing for the joystick gaming mouse, and again, picking the winner on May 1st. So if you want the joystick gaming mouse, go back to that video and leave a comment. Obviously, go ahead and like both videos, and you have to be subscribed. I have this app thingy that I can check if you're subscribed or not. I don't know if it works, but we'll see. I'll pay for shipping and everything, so it's no cost to you. So, thanks again for all the support, boys. Make sure to have them noties on, because we have a joystick gaming keyboard coming very soon, and this thing is nasty. Also, we have the best budget build we have ever done. It can stream, play Valorant at 200 FPS, everything. Oh yeah, and one more thing.
Lady of Bots.